Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to Political Playback. This is episode number 45. And just for a change, I have Simon O'Connor with me. How are you, Simon?
I'm doing very well, although my voice is giving out again, Bob, so I'm sucking busily
Okay.
on a lozenge here.
Okay. Now, coming up in this episode, we have got a lot to cover. The four COVIDteers who won't appear at the public COVID inquiry. Labour's Willow-Jean Prime, strike two. We've got to talk about Chlöe Swarbrick's theatrics in the House. Christopher Luxon creates a diplomatic spat with Israel. The latest political polls, and is the media already in campaign mode to sack Luxon? And if we have time, which, maybe, the results of a media wellbeing survey. The America's Cup organisers reckon they know what a woman is. And boot camps are called a failure because the youth don't come out as perfect little angels. So, Simon, let's get into this. And image of the day today, I did just want to show you this one. This is from the Media Council. They have upheld a complaint against the press. The press did this, yet another critical article against school lunches. The problem was that they only went to the groups that were totally against the lunches, and the reporter actually worked for one of those organisations that was totally against this new lunch scheme. And the Media Council called them out for it, and good. And I would say the more we refer some of these blatant biased pieces to the Media Council, look, I know it's after the fact, but it is worth doing, isn't it?
It is, because it shows that people are watching and are prepared to hold them to account. So no, this is good, and it restores a little bit of confidence in the Media Council that they're not completely biased. I mean, there's been decisions they've made in the past, Bob, or a lack of decisions which we're not happy with. But this is a good and the right one. The media and some of these journalists have become absolutely obsessed with lunches for, limited good reasons.
Yeah, and I think that is the problem, is that they were just obsessed with it. They were constantly negative on it. But to just do a completely one-sided article, but then again, I was just revisiting the media coverage of the overturning of Roe v. Wade, the abortion issue, the conversion therapy law issue, the parliamentary protest against the mandates. It's par for the course with the media, and this is why their trust is down. And I just wish they would realise this is why their trust is down, and they should be doing everything they can to prevent being accused of this type of stuff. This seemed like just basic errors of putting a new reporter. I mean, it's like it's like you starting to work for the New Zealand Herald and being told to write an article about the family first. Conflict of interest. Don't go near it.
Yeah, conflict of it. Exactly right. But as you say, trust is declining. In fact, there was a report given to Minister Goldsmith recently, which I think it was TVNZ had to respond to, because it was said you're not perceived as being neutral. You actually need to rebuild trust. And then you can even look overseas. The BBC is in trouble at the moment because they've been given guidelines of how to specifically report on Gaza, for example. And it's to not actually be one-sided. It's to only ever talk about famine and starvation, and any evidence to the contrary is to be ignored. I mean, it's black and white. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, and we will come back to that issue, because I actually saw a ex-journalist from the Associated Press based in Israel who said that they were given a quite clear steer on how they are to report it. In fact, there was more. What was the point here? There's more reporters in Israel than there is combined in a number of hotspots around Africa. And the point was that it was just a really interesting point, I found.
No, he was good. Matty Friedman, I think his name is. And that was one of his 2 points is, they have something like 40 journalists covering Israel. This is, I think, the Associated Press, which is far greater than the number of journalists covering the likes of China, India, and Africa. And he was arguing that that obsessive focus actually makes little things turn into very big things. It's a disproportionate but deliberate coverage. But no, it was a really good article. Thanks for sending it to me.
All right, let's talk about the four COVIDteers. This is the three of them, actually. This
comes
is
up
four
with
of them.
these?
Here we are, the four COVIDteers not coming to an inquiry near you. And look, probably the three main ones that we're aware of is Jacinda Ardern, Grant Robertson, and Chris Hipkins. Two of them are out of politics on the gravy train elsewhere, but Chris Hipkins, he's still wanting everyone's vote. He wants to be the next Prime Minister. So he was asked why he's not willing to front up in public. I think in fairness, let's listen to his response and then I'll get your response to what he says, Simon.
I provided written evidence to the inquiry. I answered every question that they had. I attended the interview that they scheduled for me. They had asked for 2 hours. They ran out of questions after an hour. They've indicated they have no further questions for me at that point. They then asked me to repeat my answers again to attend another process where I would repeat my answers again. I'd already answered all of their questions, and they themselves said that it wasn't a matter of gathering any further information, that there was no further information they were looking for from me.
All right. You buy that?
No, not really, because I think a big part of it is them actually in a public forum. I mean, part of what needs to happen here for New Zealand to move on is a restoration of trust in our leadership, and to see that publicly. So look, it's great that he's submitted some evidence and he's talked to the commissioners. That's brilliant. But there is that public element to it. And we do it in Parliament, and he does it in Parliament all the time. Select committees don't just take written evidence, they call people in front of them. And there is just something about that face-to-face side of it. And look, ultimately he's running away. So is Jacinda, so is Grant Robertson. And I personally think, Bob, I don't know what your take is, but I think it's a moral failure. They should front and speak not just to the commissioners, but to the public around what they were thinking then and what they are reflecting on now.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to the media commentary on this, because they would have been totally on side with the whole COVID response, maybe because of the funding, of course. But now they're sort of really saying, okay, they should show up, they need to be accountable, and it's about public perception. So it's interesting to sort of hear their response. I mean, are we losing out by not having that public display, the fact that they're still getting asked the questions?
Yeah, I think we are losing out. And I mean, I want to be clear, I don't want this to be a kangaroo court or a drama, but the sheer ability of them to front a committee, a public committee, and people can see them there being prepared to use that word you just used, accountable, being prepared to be accountable, to take questions, to field answers, I think would go a long way, actually, to, well, restoring some of that trust and cohesion. Again, these guys, there's the four of them, your COVIDteers. You know, I put it on my socials yesterday. They were never afraid to, talk during COVID endlessly, particularly at 1 o'clock. Now they're completely silent. And that, again, is a moral failure, first and foremost. True leadership is not just about making decisions, but being prepared to actually talk about why you made them. And these guys are running away.
So can they be summoned, told that they have to show up?
Short answer is yes. It would be unusual, but actually the Royal Commission has the power to summon them. And for whatever reason, we have to trust the commissioners, I think, to a degree, have chosen not to do so. I don't know the reasoning. That's not clear. I just wish the four of them and others had just turned up, just talk through. As I, probably saying ad nauseum, they were not worried at all of talking endlessly during the COVID days. They weren't worried at all about stripping people of their fundamental human rights. And now when there's an opportunity to help New Zealand understand and shape future responses, nowhere to be seen. And last little thing, Bob, Chris Hipkins, and along with doing what he's doing here or what he's not doing, and Chlöe Swarbrick's activities, which we'll talk about later, have taken all the heat off National. Now, I'm biased. I think that's probably a good thing, but actually we may look back to this week with Chris's denials and Chloe's charades,
Theatrics.
Might have actually saved this government.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are going to come up to that, so let's talk about that shortly. Let's just check a couple of comments. Rainish says they wanted to avoid the problem, not face the reality. Rosie says subpoena them. If they refuse, they should be arrested. Well, legally, they can't be arrested. They can only, their silence is an admission in itself, isn't it, Simon? That's the perception. That's the really bad look that I think that everybody's talking about, is that by them not even showing up, that silence is actually quite damning.
Oh, it is. And look, I have no doubt that there's massive damage control, spin doctors and PR doctors all in the Labour Party offices at the moment trying to work out how to protect these guys. And, another part, if you want to think about it, is Grant Robinson and Jacinda have thrown Chris under a bus themselves. It actually shows, I would argue, not a particularly close relationship between the three of them, because they're leaving Hipkins out to dry because of their decisions. But no, I don't know if they can be arrested, to go to Rosie's question. They can certainly be compelled. I'd have to go and look up the details. But we probably need to remind people, Bob, if they want to comment like Rosie, Family First's Facebook page and Family First YouTube channel. So they can bombard you.
And the YouTube wasn't quite working to start with, but Gordon's fixed it, so it is all go. So we are getting the comments coming through thick and fast. All right, let's move on. And look, let's just cover a Labor MP, another Labor MP who's having a tough time. So we talked about this. Did we talk about it last week? Where basically Willow-Jean Prime is a spokesperson for education for Labor. Erica Stanford, the Minister for Education, tried to involve her in the whole text thing. Actually, we talked about it on Straight Talk on Monday night, didn't we? And whether Willow-Jean Prime was right just to keep herself slightly separated from the process so that she could not be compromised, so that she could, from outside, say, well, this isn't going to work. But she wasn't even polite enough to say that, to say, well, look, I won't be showing up. So that sort of backfired, especially when Labor came out kicking and screaming when NCEA was announced as changing, and they said, well, we haven't been consulted. And of course, then the letters came out showing, and the text showing that she had been consulted. Then, this week, another incident where she's basically claimed that in youth justice facilities, there's all these meth things going on, drugs and fight clubs. When she's asked for evidence, somebody told me. And I always remember when I first started Family First, Simon, that a very good friend said, if you're going to go and campaign on something, get your ducks in a row first. Make sure it's credible, you've checked your sources, you've verified stuff, because there's nothing more embarrassing and there's no quicker way to lose credibility than to come out shouting and screaming that there's a fire and there isn't.
Yeah, it is. Look, I love how you phrase this. This is strike two. The NCEA one, as we touched on, it's not unusual for an opposition MP to not attend those briefings. Rodney Hyde summed it up really well. And people, of course, with our watch, read, and listen, can jump onto our website and pull out what Rodney said. But she didn't have the politeness or the political nous to put the decline in. This one around the fight clubs, you're 100% right. You don't make things up. I mean, Ginny Anderson, who was the shadow minister for police last year, made up some figures as well, and people might be able to cast their mind back. There were days and days of her being asked why she put out false figures. And this will now be the same for Willow-Jean. So she's really blotted her copybook on this one. And I think, again, you're right. This is strike two. If there's another third one, Hipkins will have to show some leadership and sack her.
Okay, everybody's warming up on the comments. Simply Green says, the old trust me bro standard of evidence. Mark Fleming raises a good point just about the Hipkins issue. Anyone doing an OIA on the discussions with those lawyers he mentioned in his Hosking interview? Hipkins said lawyers' fees were paid for by taxpayers. That makes the discussions public info as far as I know. Actually, no, if it's legal, it'll be privy, it'll be protected.
Yeah, legally privileged.
Yeah, but look, theoretically, it's going to come out in the report, but it feels like the committee has been muzzled a little bit. Actually, let me read these other two comments. David says, better stay silent and be thought a fool than speak and remove all doubt. And Rosie's right, their silence is deafening. And I guess that's the point we're making. It's kind of that right to silence. It's almost an admission of guilt. I did laugh when they said, oh, look, we don't want to speak in public because people will use the clips for misinformation. I mean, they're back to harking on this misinformation label. It's just, if that's the best reason they can come up with, they really need to go away and look for better excuses.
They do. And, let's just return to the fact this was arguably in a generation, if not wider than that, the most significant event that's happened to New Zealand. Again, they shut the country down. They mandated medical procedures. They effectively bought off the press. every human right, from free speech to freedom of religion, was quashed, quelled, and limited. And so this is something really, really serious that they've been asked to speak into. And again, authentic leadership would have them actually asking to go, to say, we'll come and speak as much as possible. But instead, they don't want to be accountable. They want to be silent. And I think, commenters are quite correct. We can infer from the silence. And I think it will cost Hipkins now. It could well even cost him his job.
Okay. Why do you say that?
I think this is very damaging for him. He's been trying to be a very small target for quite a while, and we'll see it in the polls a little bit that, as National and the Coalition have been struggling in places, Labour's been very quiet, very limited policy. He's kept a very low profile. Therefore, people sort of forget about him and forget about Labour. Now he's back front and centre, and I think that will put a lot of pressure on him. It will remind a lot of voters to go, actually, you were the guy who locked us down, and you won't even talk about it. So I think that's well, I not think, that is what I mean. So I'll leave it there. Otherwise, we'll never get to any other topic.
Okay, no, interesting point, and we will come back to that when we look at the latest polling. And you can present your theory, and I'll present mine because I'm pretty strong on my theory as well. So we'll see who is right. Anyway, someone who wasn't silent and who really wanted to be heard was our very dear friend Chlöe. And over the weekend, she spoke at the AGM, and she said, "Anger won't get us anywhere." In fact, I saw the quote. Audrey Young quoted it in her latest article that came out this afternoon, and she says, anger is designed to outrage. It gets headlines. This is Chlöe speaking. It gets cut through. It sucks up the oxygen and depletes the energy necessary to focus on the bigger picture. It benefits the multi-millionaires and billionaires and their puppet politicians. All of this is designed to deflect, distract, and divide. Somebody must have written that speech for her, because I don't think she realised what she was saying, because she turns up to Parliament and this happens.
Speaker, I will reiterate my call for the government to pick up our unlawful occupation of Palestine sanctions bill and to sanction Israel for its war crimes. If we find 6 of 68 government MPs with a spine, we can stand on the right side of history.
That is completely unacceptable to make that statement. Withdraw it and apologise.
No.
Then leave the House for the rest of the week.
Happily.
She'll happily leave for a week, but then she wanted to come back the next day. Look, there's 2 aspects to this I just want to deal with. The first is the procedural, and then it's
I'm just
kind
loving
of like,
the photo.
Yes, I know. I thought that was a pretty mean photo that Stuff used. And that's why I actually picked it, because I thought, wow, even the media are being a little bit mean on this particular one. I wonder whether she's lost the room in general. But I just want to ask this question, because you have sat under parliamentary rules for 12 years, saying that the opposition is spineless. What's the problem with that when you can also say the C word?
Yeah, the C word complicates things, but calling people spineless, gutless, lacking courage, no honour, is a direct personal attack or an imputation on a member of Parliament. So it's really an example of playing the man, not the ball. And so the whole point of trying to keep order, trying to keep the Parliament with a sense of decorum, is to really stop MPs attacking each other personally. And again, particularly with rather feisty terms like spineless. It's also why you run around calling MPs racist and so forth, because those are very inflammatory terms. It really just sets MP off against MP, and they end up debating and insulting one another and not actually the case in hand. So long and short, which is probably more long, Chlöe just went to the old tried and tested playing the man. She stepped away from an argument and basically, insulted the entire Parliament in particular, but also the opposition MP. So Jerry was right to call her out.
So basically, Jerry Brownlee, the Speaker of the House, implied that she was saying to him, because you won't do what she wants, you're spineless. And so he basically took that as an insult. I know that the defence on Labour's, Chris Hipkins was trying to defend Chlöe and was saying that John Key apparently, when he was Prime Minister, had called the opposition, what was the word? You were probably in the House at the time. You probably gave him the words. What was the words that he got in trouble for? And
you've
Spineless?
It was only on, I can't remember it.
It wasn't spineless, was it? No,
It wasn't
no,
spineless. I think it was actually
spineless.
a couple of words. I mean,
I'll look it up while you talk.
Yeah. Look, the Parliament's not a perfect place, and so simply looking back, and I can see what Hipkins is doing. It would, if the shoe was on the other foot, National or ACT or New Zealand First would be doing this, but just because John Key said things that were out of order and inappropriate, or Helen Clark, or Willie Jackson, or whoever in the past, and it wasn't picked up, doesn't mean that you can no longer pick anything up in now and into the future. So, yeah, even if John Key said things that he shouldn't have, and the Speaker didn't react at the time, well, that's a mistake of the past. We're dealing with the now. And again, she was not only out of order of using that word,
Gutless.
but...
Thank you, Sue. Sue said it was gutless. John Key called the opposition gutless. So what is... I actually saw Sir David Carter, who was the Speaker of the House then. He said in hindsight he should have called John Key out for it, because apparently it got pretty raucous. But he calls the opposition gutless. Chlöe says that they're spineless. I mean, are we being a bit too precious here?
No, not at all. I mean, at the end of the day, our political tradition, our Westminster tradition, is based on a whole lot of learnings, and we've learnt over hundreds of years, not just in New Zealand, but of course into the British Parliament. If you allow MPs to go around calling each other gutless, spineless, cowards, racists, you don't have order. You no longer have discussions. It's the same reason, Bob, why you don't bring family. You shouldn't bring family into the debates. It's these unwritten conventions. And look, you saw the uproar that was caused by Chloe's behaviour. And she achieved exactly what she wanted, although it's possibly not working out so well for her now.
No, well, that's a very good point. Now, there was a very funny bit because she was on breakfast the following morning with Ryan Bridge on the Herald morning show. And I just want to show you this little clip because David Seymour got an absolute zinger. It was really quite funny.
I will be in Parliament today, yes.
All right.
So you're going to apologise?
That's obviously a yes too.
I don't know what I have to apologise for.
Well, because you can't go back without apologising. That's the thing. So, anyway.
I'm engaging directly with the Speaker's office, and I think that he will come to understand that the punishment that he's dished out is completely contrary to the reality.
Good luck with that.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
The problem with extremists, they believe the ends justify the means because they're so right they don't need to play by anyone else's
Debt.
or justify.
Seymour's 100% correct.
Yeah, yeah. He does come with some real zingers, doesn't he? Right. So just in terms of Chlöe, interesting point. I think Audrey Young in that article, she said that, and I think you alluded to this right at the beginning, is that Chlöe has done the government a huge favour because she has taken the focus off cost of living, health, inflation,
Bad
all that
polls.
type of stuff. Yeah, bad polls, and put it back basically on Chlöe.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was, referring to earlier. I mean, if you think about last week, the government wasn't on the ropes, but it wasn't a particularly good week for government. Things weren't going particularly favourably, as we say, bad polls, questions around Luxon's leadership. She, and now Hipkins with the COVID stuff, has effectively taken all that heat off the coalition. In fact, bizarrely, the government might be feeling like, hey, could someone talk to us? But it really is all about her. And I wrote a Substack about this yesterday. And ultimately, this is the Chlöe show. And I went as far, and I'll go as far again here, that Chlöe in many ways is demonstrating that she doesn't actually genuinely care about what's happening in Israel, Gaza. She's interested in her own costume play and being the complete focus and attention. And even that comment that the Speaker will come to understand my position. I mean, what an arrogance.
Okay, I'm just texting the accountant to invoice you for that gratuitous advertising for your Substack there. They really sneaked that one, and that was quite clever. I wasn't even expecting it. All right, let's move on. And so a bit of a blow-up, a bit of a diplomatic spat. And look, in fairness, let's just play exactly what Luxon said. Let's not clip it to our advantage. Let's play the whole thing in context. and then let's just comment on it. So he's basically asked about Netanyahu, about Gaza, and about the two-state solution.
I think what's happening in Gaza is utterly appalling. I think Netanyahu has gone way too far. I think he has lost the plot, and I think that what we're seeing overnight with the attack on Gaza City is utterly unacceptable, and that's what we have been calling for as an international community now for a long period of time. He is not listening to the international community, and that is unacceptable.
Saying that he's lost the plot, that's some of the strongest language that you've used. What's prompting that now?
Well, I've been consistent in the language to say, we are in the situation we're observing is utterly appalling. Utterly appalling. It is driving more human catastrophe across Gaza. We have called as a community, we've worked together with other like-minded countries. We are a small country, a long way away, with very limited trade with Israel. We have very little connection with the country. But we have stood up for values and we keep articulating them very consistently. And what you have seen is Israel not listening to the global community at all. We have asked for humanitarian assistance to be delivered unfettered. It hasn't happened. We have said a forcible displacement of people and an annexation of Gaza would be a breach of international law. We have called these things out consistently, time and time again. You've seen New Zealand join many of our friends and partners around the world to make these statements, and he's just not listening. And so, that's why what we've seen is an attack on Gaza City is a really serious issue, because we don't want to extinguish the pathway to a two-state solution.
That's a huge call, though. Saying a fellow leader has lost the plot, a fellow world leader has.
I'm telling you what my personal view is. As a human being looking at the situation, that's how I feel about it.
It sounds like what you're saying there is that Israel has committed crimes against humanity at the very least, or war crimes in Gaza. Is that your view?
Well, our view is, as you saw on the week. Yeah, but our view is that they're not complying with international law, and that is a decision that ultimately will be made by others, and that's why we support the ICJ, we support the ICC. New Zealand has been involved in both those bodies. We uphold and respect the decisions that they make. They are best placed to make decisions about individuals and also about state action, as you know, through those respective courts.
Okay, and that's why he said that if Netanyahu had turned up to New Zealand, he would have been arrested and locked up. Yeah, I don't know. It worries me that Luxon, like Albanese in Australia, their source of information seems to be the Hamas ministry. Anyway, what's your response?
Look, it's unnecessary. I don't buy the whole, this is my personal view, and then what he's going to put on a prime ministerial view. You don't get that luxury, I don't think. So I don't buy that. I don't think it's particularly professional. I don't think it's diplomatic. I think you can express your anger, frustration, and outrage in much more constructive ways. I mean, our allies and many others will be looking at this and going, that's not the appropriate way to deal with things. I mean, gosh, it's Keir Starmer and Donald Trump and others going, I wonder what he says about us behind closed doors. It's just untidy, not necessary. I think there is a more constructive way to speak. And the other side of it too is this obsession with Netanyahu as if Israel is a dictatorship. Now, when I was in Israel, there are really mixed views on the man. Okay, there are people who can't stand him. There are people who support him. But it seems lost on Luxon, or at least through his comments, that Israel is not a dictatorship or an authoritarian state. Netanyahu is a democratically elected prime minister who heads up a government of multiple ministers inside a parliament, or what they call a Knesset. So this scapegoating of one person, regardless of what people viewing think of Netanyahu, I'm not here to praise or defend the man. It's just this obsessive scapegoating on Netanyahu, I think betrays, again, a lack of understanding. And as always, no mention of Hamas. Why are they going into Gaza City? Because that's where Hamas is still hiding, where they think the last hostages are. And you don't have to think that's a good idea or not, but that's why. They didn't just wake up and go, let's just start bombing Gaza City. I mean, this is all the stuff that he seems to be ignoring in order just to sound outraged.
Okay, the Deputy Foreign Minister, she got on Twitter and she tweeted this. She said, I guess when you don't really need an army because your most deadly enemy is a possum or a cat, you wouldn't comprehend the challenges that come with facing Hamas, a jihadist death cult only a few kilometres away from your country that rape, execute, burn alive and starve your people. So that was a pretty strong pushback from the Deputy Foreign Minister. I mean, you have been involved in diplomacy in your role as a MP. How much damage is this as a diplomatic spat or scrap, as I originally worded it?
I don't think it's like hugely damaging, but it does get noticed. Obviously in Israel, it's getting noticed down here, but it does get it noticed across the world, just about how leaders handle themselves. So it's just untidy. Excuse me.
Has he undermined Chlöe Swarbrick in terms of he's actually come across even stronger because he's, I think Chlöe does criticise, well, she does criticise Israel, but that was quite strong what he said. And what fascinated me was Audrey Young in her article, so she's, senior commentator with the New Zealand Herald. She said, Christopher Luxon suddenly told us what he really thinks, that Benjamin Netanyahu has lost the plot, and it resonated. Who did it resonate with? The only people I can think it resonated with was the other media that are all on this campaign together.
Yeah, well, look, I think unfortunately this shows Audrey's bias. I mean, to be slightly generous, people are wanting to see an authentic Christopher Luxon. What he says, what he does. We've talked about this before here on Political Playback and Straight Talk, that you're not really sure which person you're getting. There is a lack of authenticity. So the fact that he said what he's thought, great. It's at one level welcome. Probably of all the topics he could genuinely speak, this wasn't the one. You used diplomacy and diplomatic matters, and certainly when talking about other heads of government. But the comment by Audrey that this would resonate, no, this will only resonate with people who have a particular perspective, a single perspective on this around Palestine, which is by and large supporting the likes of Hamas. So, yeah, it resonates with some people. But I think what the media is trying to do, and we've seen this time and time again, haven't we, Bob? They want to make people feel that there can only be one way to think about this.
Yeah.
And that if you, in this case, support Israel or you're more nuanced in your views, that's not acceptable. You have to resonate, which means you have to be full throttle, two-state solution, pro-Palestine, sympathetic to Hamas, and so forth.
Okay, well, Australia has talked about this two-state solution, and of course, one of the surveys. So, I mean, the good thing about Australia is that they have some newspapers that aren't rabid left, like the Australian, and so I often get articles from there, and they just quoted this poll where it says that only about 1 in 6 people prefer Mahmoud Abbas, which is the so-called Palestinian leader, but 60% of the Palestinian area support Hamas. So in effect, they are still beholden to Hamas, and yet this supposedly two-state solution somehow thinks that Hamas are just going to disappear. The Sydney Morning Herald, which is not a right-wing newspaper, it's very left, they had this: Hamas praises Albanese's courage, claims credit for Palestinian recognition. And so suddenly Albanese is saying, well, actually, I'm not listening to Hamas. And the question everybody's asking is, well, where did you get your information from in the first place? It was Hamas Ministries.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it a few times before. I mean, there's a potential of a two-state solution way, way down the path. We're talking decades away, after what's happened. The call for a two-state solution is designed for a Western audience. It makes your Luxons and Keir Starmers and Albaneses and others look good, and it makes Westerners feel good about themselves because, well, it just does. But secondly, it doesn't reflect the practicalities on the ground. As you've pointed out, Hamas is still well supported, even though they're a brutal group. Hamas hates Abbas and his Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. In fact, they went to war together effectively in 2005 with Hamas butchering the Fatah, which is the Palestinian Authority. Thirdly now, the Palestinian Authority is basically a criminally corrupt organization. They've pulled back mostly from violence, but it is a criminally corrupt group. So who's going to lead this state? Mad jihadists or basically criminals? Where are the defined boundaries? Bearing in mind, Bob, I mean, you know this, but for viewers to understand that Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, don't recognize Israel's right to exist. So it's going to be rather hard to define boundaries with your neighboring country that you want to destroy. They can't agree a capital. And also, there isn't and I won't go too much into this because we literally could spend hours, that the Palestinian Arabs is not one single coherent group. They're a mixture of various tribes, a lot of it interfighting, So again, these are not reasons that you cannot have a state, but these are enormous hurdles right here and now, which we can't get over. And my final point, and I'm sorry I'm on a soapbox here, but people have to understand this. When Luxon and Albanese and others say, well, these are the conditions, Hamas and them are not going to let go of power. And if a state was created, it will not be a democracy. There is just no way it will turn into a utopic liberal democracy. It's just maddening. You can probably hear it in my voice.
Yep. Okay, let's just check some of the comments. And Melanie says, Julianne Genter should have been kicked out for walking across the room in Parliament House and intimidating behaviour with hands. Were you in Parliament for that? No. Okay. No, that's a pity. She could have come over to you. Knock some sense into you. Marita says, oh, here we go. This is just to counter my sledge at you. Simon, we need you as our Prime Minister. Rainish says, Luxon looks like that guy from the Chip and Hellers ad. You're thinking of the Wakachangi guy. What's his name? Somebody will tell me. He does.
I can see his face.
Yeah, he's hilarious. He looks exactly like him. Simply Green says, I don't wish ill on Israel, but I don't think we should be getting involved. Actually, how do you respond to that, Simon? That we shouldn't be involved in this?
Well, we don't need to be deeply involved. I think, I speak into China issues, for example. I think, New Zealand can and should speak into the international scene. I've said before, democracy, if it's of value, is important everywhere. And the same with, fundamental human rights. So I think it's right and proper that New Zealand is speaking into the Israel-Gaza conflict. It is raising its concerns. But I think, too, that this is becoming sort of the political topic of New Zealand doesn't make a lot of sense. And it really is, it's a projection. It's a projection issue.
Okay, Delwyn says, what about the starvation of the Israeli hostages? What about saying that Hamas needs to let them go? Rusty says October the 7th was terrible, but pales into comparison to the evil that Netanyahu personifies. So there we go. We've got balance of opinion on this show. No shutting down debate here. Sunny Side Up says none of them are expressing this much upset about the children in Ukraine. Well, they were, but it's not the cause to celeb anymore. Linda says, can anyone tell me how many politicians stood up and said that October the 7th was unacceptable? I never heard the media talk about it. I'll never vote national while the leader is so stupid to want a two-state solution. Excuse me. I think in fairness, the media did cover October the 7th, but they appear to have quickly moved on. And I notice a lot of groups speaking up now did not come out in full condemnation back when that October attack had. And actually, I got a commentary from a guy, James McPherson, who's sometimes on Sky News in Australia. And he just said, everyone knows the Gaza story. It's on banners, badges, and your barista's latte art. But how many know that in Nigeria, 32 Christians are murdered every single day, or that the same bloodbath is underway in Congo and Mozambique? Silence. Critics. So why the disparity? The easy answer is that outrage has become a social currency. Being upset by the latest thing boosts your virtue score, and Gaza scores top points at here. Is that a cynical view, or is that realistic?
No, I think it's very realistic. I think there's an obsession which goes back thousands of years when it comes to Israel or the Jews, and it's just manifesting itself again. I mean, what we are seeing today is exactly what we saw in the last century, what we saw through in the pogroms in Russia and all the way back through the Middle Ages, and just keep going back. It's an absolute obsession with the Jewish people. And as people have commented, there are terrible things still happening in Ukraine. Where are the protests? Christians being terribly butchered and killed by Islamists in Africa. Silence. Absolute silence. And so, I don't think it's cynical at all. I think it's right on the money.
Okay, let's move on, and let's be nice to Luxon, and let's come to his defence, actually. Actually, it's not that one, it's this one. I changed the order because I just want to talk about some coverage and whether the media are already... I mean, it's interesting just to watch their response to yesterday because suddenly Luxon is great. But up until then, there'd been huge negativity, and it started at the weekend when Albanese, the Australian Prime Minister, was over, and Luxon and Albanese did this cheesy... kind of tour where they flew a helicopter up to the top of the ski fields in Queenstown. Beautiful shot, argued about Pavlova. I mean, to be honest, I thought it was just a really good thing on trans-Tasman relationships and also on a bit of a tourist thing as well. Let me just show you that little clip.
Look, to all our Australian and Kiwi friends, I think quite clearly I have resolved it today.
Clearly it's half-half. Australia, New Zealand.
This is a compromise solution. We all know the Kiwis invented the Pavlova. They stole it. They try and claim it. But you've seen pieces broken out up here on this mountain today in South Island, eh?
This is clearly Australian.
That's Australian with your Tim Tams.
Yeah.
And that's us with our Kiwi fruit. That's a good way
Problem,
to go. I mean, I think
problem solved.
We have solved a centuries-old debate.
And we had to come up here to do it.
Okay, bit of fun, cheesy as. But here's the spin-off. What is Chris Luxon doing on top of a mountain? Stuff says 2 helicopters, 2 prime ministers and a Pavlova. Was it worth $27,000? And there's just lots of examples of the media having a bit of go at Luxon. Heather Duplessis-Allen from News Talk ZB during the weekend saying how Stanford was great and a possible leadership replacement. And then Andrea Vance from the Dominion Post, Luxon's leadership running out of oxygen. Yeah, it seems like they're after him. Do you get that feeling as well?
I do. I mean, look, where there's smoke, there's fire, which is actually, now that I've said it, probably the wrong analogy, that there's always some truth to this, that is driving some of the media behavior. But, we've talked about it privately and before, that they're nitpicking every and all on Luxon. Sorry, brain just went on to a different direction for a moment. They're just going to barrel in on him. And so, had this been Jacinda Ardern at the top of the glacier or the mountain, it would have been a lovely puff piece and a whole different approach. So long and short, they are after him. They're nitpicking. Everything is framed in the negative. As I say, Luxon to a small degree is sort of not so much allowed it to happen, Bob, but there's just enough of an angst there in the public, which the media continue to exploit. But I think it's quite unfair on him because basically he can't do anything right, and they just keep going after him. And I think part of it is journalists love dramatic stories, and if there was a change of leadership, they would love that because there's lots of stories to write. It weakens the centre-right government. It means their lefty mates have a bigger chance of getting back in. So there's more than just, as I say, nitpicking. There's certain political intention here in the media as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go back to that earlier one that I jumped to, and that was the latest political polls, because with all the media's efforts, it's just interesting to see sort of what's happening. So, if you sort of listen to the narrative, it's like National can do no right, and literally, and Labour are left to pick up the pieces, pardon the pun. And yet, when you look at the latest One News one, which the media have focused on, the fact of the matter is that National Act and New Zealand First, because New Zealand First is doing polling so well, and Te Pāti Māori isn't, and the Greens can't. The Greens, which are the leader of the opposition, by the way, the new opposition party, which can't get above 10, 11, 12% max, they just aren't helping Labour. And so they're doing quite well. Now, the other thing is, and so this is my theory, Simon, I did share it with you on Monday night, but I'm going to get it through again just in case anybody didn't hear it. Luxon is on 20%. He's still the most preferred Prime Minister, but this is like the end of the world. He can't get above 20. And I want to just show you this little graphic that I have got, which I stole. And it shows you his rating. And you'll notice if you just watch his line, he hovers around 20s. Maybe the highest he gets is 25. This is up against Jacinda. And then you'll see Jacinda steps down. So he's up to 20, he got up to 22. Chris Hipkins is popular because everyone thinks, he might be good, but then they realise he's terrible. But look at Christopher Luxon. He's still around, he's actually there at 18%. This is a couple of months before the election, and he won the election. So my argument is, actually, I don't think Christopher Luxon is ever going to get above maybe 25% as preferred Prime Minister. And that is not the issue that matters. The issue that matters is whether people want a centre-right government or a centre-left government. What say you? I mean, that's a brilliant theory, isn't it?
But I think you're mostly right. I mean, I would put it this way: we are not a presidential system, despite the media and others trying to run that narrative. And actually, political parties, try to invest so much into their leader, and of course, there's import. But we don't vote for our prime minister as such, like you do for a president. You vote for political parties. And I think I heard it the other night. Bolger was incredibly unpopular, and yet he went on to win an election because most people, I guess, going to focus in on the issues and the policies. Yes, leadership will have an impact, but we're not a presidential system. Second point is, you're right, he's not popular. You should be in your first term at your zenith. He's struggling in himself, but the media, as you're right, they keep putting the boot in. So even when he's doing good, and he has done a lot of good, they're still putting the boot in. So that's not gonna help. And the third point, which has slipped my mind, therefore it mustn't have been particularly relevant.
While you think what the point is, I was just trying to think, has anybody ever lost an election and then come back and won the next one? I know, for example, Sir Bill English, I mean, he lost an election, but then it was a 15-year gap before not 15, 10-year gap before he came back and should have won. Well, he won the election. It's just that Winston didn't let him win it. 12 years. And is there an example of a leader of a party who's lost an election, stayed on as leader, and then come back and won? Can you think of one?
I can't in New Zealand. I'm trying to think whether John Howard fitted that in Australia. He might have. I'm terrible on this sort of political history.
Trump would be the other one, of course.
That's actually a very good point. By the way, that was my third point I was thinking. It was that whole party vote, because I don't know about you, when I very rarely watch the news, but I knew this poll was coming out. And what I would say was shrill coverage of it all. Again, Luxon's numbers and this here and that there. But I went, actually, this is not the catastrophe which Mikey Sherman and others are projecting. At the end of the day, the centre-right coalition wins again. Yeah. And by the way, to viewers, I'm not trying to make a judgment if that's a good or a bad thing, but the overall message is the centre-right still wins, even if Labour's gone up, was it 2% there? I can't quite read it.
Labour's gone up 4%. No, it had a big jump. Yeah. I mean, that's just slightly on the margin of error, but that's at the cost of the Greens, who are, of course, the leading party of the opposition, according to Marama and Chlöe.
Well, I was expecting, again, with the early tweets, and as the news started, I thought, oh my Lord, I'm expecting to see a massive collapse, the fact that the centre-left could form government. But no, there's 5 whole seats. That's actually quite a substantial majority. And you're going, they barely touched on that. Again, comes at your earlier point, Bob, they fixate on Luxon and just any opportunity to put the boot in him.
Yeah. Okay, look, we've got time for one more, to be honest, and I'm going to pick a fun one, and that's about the America's Cup, because I do want to ask some questions about this. So basically, this has got nothing to do with politics. We're going to get into some yachting, but it's just that the reason we need to cover this is because the America's Cup organisers can apparently know what a woman is, but the politicians don't. So there's our connection. But anyway, they've changed the rules, and 5 people on the boat. They've changed the biking and all that type of really physical work. And so every boat has 5 on the crew, and one of them has to be a woman. And so I've got a couple of questions that hopefully you can answer for me, Simon, because I'm a little bit concerned here. I mean, there is a women's division already. So women can compete, so they can participate. And if women are good enough, my understanding is that they could still be on the America's Cup boat. There wasn't actually a ban on women. It's just that now there's the token woman. And so that's the first thing. The second question I have is, does that include someone who identifies as a woman? My third question is, what if you're non-binary? I mean, which category do you come in on the boat? And how do women feel about this kind of token? You have to have a woman. It's kind of like when teams are picking who's in their team, and the captains say, you get Simon. And they say, no, we don't want Simon. And they say, you've got to take Simon. I mean, is it like that?
I think there's an element of it. I mean, it'd be interesting to know what the viewers' think, particularly our female viewers, but I had a series of thoughts very similar to yours. The first was, they know what a woman is. And then I thought, well, this will be interesting for the first, trans or whatever, as a non-binary who comes forward. Yeah. So actually, I fit into this. I mean, it'll be interesting to know if they've preempted that in any way. Do they actually know what a woman is, even though they've declared it to be such? But I'm uncomfortable with the quotas. As you say, tokenistic, but also this is elite sport. And I don't know about you, I want to see excellence. I want the best of the best. And if they're all women or they're all men or it's a mix, I don't mind. But I just want excellence. This is the America's Cup. And so I don't think there should be quotas at all. Again, if someone's good enough to be on that boat, then so be it. So I don't know, but that all sits on the background. Is I have to admit, Bob, I lost interest in the America's Cup many years ago when it got so professional and detached. I mean, it's Team New Zealand, but they're never really here, and they're racing in Naples. I mean, good for them. Yeah, okay.
Look, we have got time just to do this last one, and let's do it. And I did laugh when I saw it. It's just the fact that they've done these boot camps, and some of the kids have come out of the boot camps, and apparently they haven't come out of angels or gone into monasteries. They've actually done some naughty things. Now, when I was working as a youth worker in South Auckland, we also took away 7 kids for a bit of a boot camp. It only went for a week, but it was quite an intense time, and we'd been working with the boys beforehand and afterwards. They didn't come back angels, but what happened was that there was a change of mindset, and that's what these organisers have said, is that there has been some positive turnarounds, disassociating with certain groups. One of the boys wants to get his tattoos removed, some simple things like that. But the opposition is so anti-boot camps that basically they want them to come out as nuns, and it just ain't going to happen.
No, I think you've summed it up really well. I mean, it's just another example of the government can't do anything right, according to the media. And again, just putting the boot into boot camps. I mean, what's the alternative? I mean, this was one of the... but I should have told you that earlier.
I mean, actually, one of the questions here is, what did they do? I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, did they steal some lollies? Did they tell a lie or swear at a teacher? I mean, we don't actually know that. They reoffended. What does that actually mean? Because these are the hardest kids to turn around. These were the most, violent, most crimes, so you're picking the worst of the worst. And that's why I say you're not going to turn them into Mother Teresa in a couple of months.
No, you're not. I mean, it'll be more serious crimes. We don't know specifically which ones, but it'll be the much more serious end and repeat offending. I mean, to put it really simply, if only one of those 10 changed their life, I see that as a good outcome, because people can throw stones at these programs, but they do have some success. And if you don't have them, what's the alternative? And when I was in Parliament, when Jacinda was in power, it was just excuse after excuse for these young people. And I think that's actually morally unjustifiable. I think society needs to do all they can to help these young people to correct and change their course. Otherwise, we just allow them to wallow in their crime and bad behaviours. So, look, I applaud the government for giving this a go. I don't see it as a complete failure. Of course, we'd like to see fewer reoffending, but there are improvements, and that's a good thing.
All right, we are out of time. We've gone well over time, so fantastic job. Thank you, Simon. You can rest that throat now. And thank you, team, for watching. Sorry we didn't get to all your comments, but thank you for your endorsement of Simon for Prime Minister. I will second that, and we'll see how we go in the upcoming election. Anyway, you have a great night, and we'll see you next Thursday for Political Playback. Good night.